ways to factor. We're going to review several of the more important ones. But take a look at number 1. The way that you find a 0 is you set your equation equal to 0. So if I'm doing this guy right here, okay, I'm going to set it equal to 0. And then I'm going to try to factor. The main 2 ways we're going to do today are going to be the T-chart, which you already know how to do, and then greatest common factor. So if I'm doing that guy, that's a greatest common factor. What can I take out of both? An x. So I'd have 0 equals x times, what would be left over when I take the x out? X plus 7. From there, the 0 property says that if you have 2 things that times to 0, one of those things has to equal 0. So first I'm going to let x equal 0. Then I'm going to let x plus 7 equal 0. Now, if you look at the x equals 0, that one's already solved. Okay, we already have one of our numbers. But if x plus 7 equals 0, how would you solve that? Minus the 7 across. Good. And so then I'd have x equals 7 and negative 7 cross out. So it'd just be minus 7. Okay, we're going to skip 2 and come back to it. Look at number 3, though. Okay, number 3. Look at it. What's my GCF? We're setting it equal to 0 to find the zeros. What can I take out? Okay, an x. What's left over when I pull the x out of the equation? It was a cube, so now it's a squared. And then my 4x, when I take the x out, it's just a minus 4. Okay, now that left over is one of your specials. Okay, how do you factor x squared minus 4? That's a perfect square. So I can do square root, square root. Okay, the square root of x squared is going to be x. And then the square root of 4 is plus or minus 2. So a plus 2 in one, a minus 2 in the other. Now, remember what we said. Whenever things multiply to 0, one of them has to equal 0. So you're going to set all 3 x's equal to 0 separately. This x is by itself. This is an x plus 2 equals 0. And this is an x minus 2 equals 0. Now, notice the first guy's already solved. X equals 0, that's done. Okay, but x plus 2, how do I solve that to get x by itself if it's a plus 2 here? Minus 2 across. My answer just comes out to be negative 2. So, look at the pattern. When it's a plus 7, what's my answer? Negative 7. When it's a plus 2, my answer was negative 2. Then if it's a negative 2 in here, what do you guess the answer is going to be? Positive 2. So whatever your parentheses says, it's just going to be the opposite for the answer. So if it's a negative, you switch it to a positive. If it's a positive, you switch it to a negative. Okay, the middle one is going to be T-chart. What number do I put at the top of the chart for my middle one? Okay, a 9. How can I times 9? 2 ways. Okay, 1 and 9 or 3 and 3. Now I need him to add to minus 6. Negative 3 and negative 3. Good. Then from there, I'll have 0 equals, because remember we're finding the zeros. I'll have x squared minus 3x plus 9. And remember that these 2 guys in the middle make up the minus 6. I'm just splitting it up into 2 terms so I can factor by grouping. Okay, look at your first 2 groups. What can we take out? An x. What's left over? X minus 3. Okay, out of my second 2 groups, what can I take out? Okay, a 3, and then remember you have to pull the negative if the first term is negative. So since my first number is negative, I'm dividing by negative 3. Okay, from there, just sit in an open seat. I'll show you tomorrow.
I was asking, like, do you want me to take the test tomorrow? Or?
You can just do it tomorrow. Okay, so 9 divided by negative 3, what do we get there? So x minus 3. Then remember, these guys are supposed to match, and they do. So my factor is going to be x minus 3 for the inside, but what's the outside going to be? x again minus 3 again. So I get x minus 3 twice. Yeah? Now, if my parentheses is a minus 3, what's the answer going to be? Positive 3. So this is called a double root. Okay, so write on it. This is a double root. Okay, but these guys are all single roots. And the reason why is because if an answer only shows up once, it's a single. If it shows up twice, it's a double. Okay? So we are going to skip number 4. We're going to go to number 5. Number 4 ends up not working. Okay, so notice that all of these guys up here we could break down with our normal factoring method. So your 3 methods are GCF, perfect squares, and then T-chart. So go down to number 5. If it has too many terms, what you can do is divide by the factor that they give you. So notice here, they're telling me that x minus 3 is a factor. Well, then what I'm going to do is divide by x minus 3, and then what's left over, I'll be able to T-chart that. So if I want to divide by x minus 3, what do I put in the box? We're doing the shortcut. A regular 3. Then from there, I need to pull all my coefficients. So off my x cubed, I'm taking a 3. Off my x squared, I'm taking a 4. Then I have a minus 27 and then a minus 36. Okay, first number, what do you do with it? Straight down, so that's a 3. 3 times 3, what do I get?
9.
Put a 9 in this column. Then remember, from there, 4 and 9 make 13. Then I take that number, times it by the box. 13 times 9 is 39. Take away 27, what do you get? 39 minus 27 is 12. And then I do 12 times 3. 12 times 3 is 36. What's my remainder? 0. Now, if your remainder is not 0, it wouldn't have been a factor. So that it needs to be 0 for you to be able to move on. So because I see that that's a 0, I know that I can factor what's left over. If this is cubic, where does my answer start? X squared. So it's a 3x squared, a plus 13x, and a plus 12. And then some of y'all on your test, you didn't write the remainder of 0. That's fine. If there's 0 left over, you don't have to put it. Okay, from here, we're going to T-chart this. So at the top of my chart, I need to multiply A and C together. Okay, so 3 times 12 is 36. And can y'all think of what will times to 36 and add to 13? 4 times 9, good. Now, the order doesn't matter as long as you get 4 times 9 is 36, and then when I add them, I also get 13. So we're going to split the middle and do our factor step. So I have 3x squared plus 4x plus 9 plus 12. So I took my middle 13x, and I'm separating it into a 4 and a 9. Okay, but remember, that still adds to 13. So I'm splitting it up into 2 pieces so I can factor. What am I going to pull out of my first 2?
X.
Just an x. What's going to be left over? 3x plus 4. Out of my second 2 guys, I have a 9x and a 12. What can I divide those by? A 3. Take your 3 out. 9 divided by 3 is 3x. What about 12 divided by 3? Plus 4. So my next factor, these guys match. That's what we want. So 3x plus 4 is my first factor. What's my second factor?
X plus 3.
X plus 3, good. Okay, now, from there, what is the factor that I already divided out at the very beginning? Remember up here, x minus 3, so list that guy too. Okay, so this is called factored form. Okay, because all of your equation is broken down into parentheses. So that's called factored form. Okay, so what I want you to do now is type your, actually, hold on, we need to finish solving that. So after you write it in factored form, you're going to find your 3 x's. Now remember, the way you find them algebraically is you take each one and you set it equal to 0 separately. But remember, we kind of know a shortcut, right? If it's an x minus 3, what is the x going to be that goes with that? Positive 3. If that one's a plus 3, what answer is going to go with that one? X is going to equal negative 3. In the middle, notice you have 2 numbers. We're going to actually solve that one. So remember, you take the 3x plus 4, you set it equal to 0. And it's going to take me 2 steps to solve that. What am I going to do with the plus 4? Subtract it across to the other side. And then how will you get rid of the 3? Divide. So I would get x equals negative 4/3. Okay, so let's talk about some kind of basic things that you should notice. Look at examples 1. How many answers did you get? Look at example 1. 2 answers. What was the power on x? X to the 2. Now look at this one. What was x to the power of? 3. How many answers did I get? 3. Okay, now come back and look at this guy. It was an x to the 3. How many answers did I get? 3. Now look at this one. It was an x to the 2, but I only got 1 answer, but it was a double. So what that means is you still have 2 answers, they just happen to match each other, okay? So what we're going to look at today is what that means for the graph. So down here, a root or a 0 is going to be where the graph crosses the x-axis. Okay, that point is called the x-intercept. So these numbers that we're finding here, these are the places that my graph hits the x-axis. A single root is going to create what we call a pass, and a double root is going to create what we are going to call a bounce. Okay? So we'll talk about a triple root in a second. You can just ignore that for right now. So if I wanted to graph this guy, we're not going to graph all 3 of the top ones, but we're going to graph this one. This is what it would look like. Okay, put a dot at negative 3. Put a dot there. Put a graph at positive 3. 1, 2, 3. And then negative 4/3 would be about right here. Okay, next question. Look at your original function. I'm looking at this up here. Okay, is it even or odd? Do you remember how to tell? Look at the very first number. Is that even or odd? Okay, it's odd. So that means the ends go to the same way or opposite ways? Yes, do you remember that your ends go opposite when it's odd? Do you remember talking about that? But then if it's even, they're going to end together. So they'll either both be up or they'll both be down. Do you remember talking about that? Okay, so odds, they go opposite. Evens, they go the same way. So when I connect my graph, watch. Okay, it's going to go like this. Okay, but how do I know it's odd? Because this end is down, this end is up. So it's going to go up through that number, down through that number, up through that number. This is my negative 3. This is my negative 4/3. This is my positive 3. So when you're factoring the equation, you're actually finding each of those places that it passes through the x-axis. Okay? Now I'm going to show you a graph of a bounce just so that you can kind of get the idea. Go up to number 2. Remember how it had a double root? Okay, so come up to number 2. A double root looks like this. 1, 2, 3, put a dot. That's the only number it can cross at. So a bounce is going to be when it goes like that. That's a bounce. And the reason that it bounced is because it was a double. If it wasn't a double, it would have passed through the x-axis. Okay? So let's go ahead and just do one more. Let's do number 3. I guess we might as well. Okay, put graph number 3 here. What are my 3 values that I need to put dots on? 0, negative 2, and 2. So negative 2 we'll put here, 0 is here, 2 is here. Now look at your equation. This one was an x squared, that means it's even. Do you notice that both of your ends ended up? Okay, that's because it's even. Even, the ends go the same way. Okay? But then for this one, I notice that it's odd. That means that my points are going to end opposite direction. So I'm going to go down like that. So this is an example of an odd graph. This is an example of an even graph. So evens, the ends stay together. Odds, the ends go opposite. Kind of makes sense? And then the values that you're finding are the places that it touches or passes through the x-axis. Okay, turn the page. So remember, we're just doing notes today. The first thing that we're going to do is, number 6. Okay, it says, how many times is 2 a root of the equation? So if you want to know how many times, think about if x equals 2 is a root, what would the parentheses have to say that would go with that? Remember, it's always the opposite. So if my answer is positive 2, it would have had to be x minus 2, right? And so if I'm going to divide by x minus 2, what's going to go in the box? Positive 2. And then I'm going to list out each of my coefficients, just like we did last time. So for my first one, x to the 4th, that counts as a 1 in the front. So I'll have 1, negative 4, 3, 4, negative 4. First number, what do? Carry it down. This part should be easy. Then 1 times the box, 2. Then I take that column, add it up. Negative 4 plus 2 is negative 2. Okay, then take your next guy. Negative 2 here times 2 is negative 4. What's 3 minus 4? Negative 1. Then I take my negative 1 times by 2. Good. Then 4 minus 2, what's left over? Last one, 2 times 2 is 4. And we get a 0. Now, if it's a 0 in this column for the remainder, that means it's a factor. So it divided evenly. Now, my original was an x to the 4, so what is my answer? X to the 3rd. So it would be 1x to the 3, 2x to the 2, 1x plus 2. So at this point, it's a single root. If it can divide again, it will be called a double root. So let's see if it can go again. So put 2 in the box. Carry down your numbers, 1, negative 2, negative 1, and 2. And we'll see if it's a double root. So, first guy carries down. 1 times 2 is 2. Add up that column. Negative 2 and 2 makes 0. 0 times the box 2 equals, 0. And then negative 1 and 0 makes negative 1. Last one, negative 1 times 2 is, and then 0 is my remainder. If your remainder is 0, did it divide evenly again? Then now it's not a single root, it's a double root. So I have x squared plus 0x minus 1. Now, if your middle term is a 0x, do you really have to write it? No, so I'm going to write it like this instead. And when you look at that, you should notice that that's factorable. I don't have to t-chart it. They're both specials. So, square root this guy, square root this guy. What's the square root of x squared? X. What's the square root of 1? Plus 1 and minus 1. So now we have all 4 of our factors. So we're going to write them right here in the factored. Okay, what was my first factor we divided by? X minus 2. How many times did that work? Twice. So I'm going to put x minus 2. Then I'm going to put a squared on it because I divided by that 2 times. Then my other 2 factors are these guys. X plus 1 and x minus 1. And that would be your factored form. Now, if those are my factors, what are my x-intercepts going to be? You're just switching the signs. So if that's a minus 2, what is it? Positive 2. If that's a plus 1, what is it? Negative 1. And if that's a minus 1, what is it? Positive 1. Now we're going to sketch the graph. So where are your dots going? At a negative 1, a positive 1, and a positive 2. Which of those is the double that's going to be a bounce? Remember, the double is this one because of the squared. So this one is going to be a bounce, and I'll show you what that looks like on the graph. Okay, so first, it should have been at positive 2, which is here. So this one is going to be my bounce. Now, look at your original equation. Was it even or odd? Look at your first power. Is it even or odd? Look at the power. X to the 4. 4 is even. If it's even, the ends go together, right? So I'm going to start up here. I'm going to go down, up, bounce, up. Okay, now do you see that both your ends are up? That's because it's even. This is a pass because it passed through the x-axis. This one is a pass because it came back up through the x-axis, but this one is a bounce because it doesn't go through. It just hits the x-axis and then keeps going up. Okay, but remember, why is it a bounce? Because it's a double. It's a double root. Make sense? Okay. Alright, so we're going to do 2 more, but the last 2, they're not going to tell you one of the factors. You're going to find it using the graph. So look at number 6. Okay, the next question. Type that into your calculator. And we're going to find one of the roots with the graph. So put it into y equals. And then I want you to find one whole number that the graph goes through. We don't want any of the decimals because we can't do the shortcut if it's a decimal. And y'all know how to do the 3, the cubed? Okay, so you'll do y equals 6x up to the 3. Then make sure that you get out of the little exponent, so you have to kind of scooch over. Okay, then I want a plus 41x squared. Then I want a minus 9x. Then a minus 14. So here's why we can't just start off. We don't know what to divide by. So step 1 is going to be, there are 2 places that you can look. You can look in the graph, or you can look in the table for the one that has a 0. So I'm typing in this equation right here into my calculator. Okay, so look at the graph. We're trying to find the one that's a whole number. Okay? So that guy's obviously not a whole number. That one's not a whole number. That one is. What number is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So my first intersection is a negative 7. So sketch the graph on your paper, and then I'll show you the other place you can find it. Look at second table. Okay, and if you come up to negative 7, do you see how it has a 0 for a partner? So that's another way that you can find the 0, is if you want to just kind of scroll through and try to find the 0, that's the other way to do it.
How do you?
I just scrolled until I saw 0 here. You see right there how 0 goes with negative 7? Oh, I just counted. So I just counted from here. That's back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay? So on my graph, I'm going to sketch it right here. So it went up, down, up. And this point I found is x equals negative 7. So if x equals negative 7, what would the parentheses have said? X plus 7. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide that out And then whatever's left over, I'll be able to factor. So if it's a plus 7 here, what do I put in the box? Negative 7. Then I'm going to have my 6, 41, negative 9, negative 14. First number, we're going to carry it down. So my 6 comes to here. What's 6 times minus 7? Negative 42, good. And then what is 41 minus 42? Negative 1. Then I do negative 1 times negative 7. What do I get there? Positive 7. Add it to negative 9. What do you get? Negative 2. From there, negative 2 times negative 7 is 14. What's my remainder? 0. If that doesn't happen, okay, then you messed something up. So, I know my first factor, down here, see where it says factored form? I'm going to put x plus 7. But I still need to find the other 2. So, when you get to this point, you're going to do a t-chart. So, if this was an x to the 3, my answer is a 6x to the 2 minus 1x minus 2. That I can t-chart. Now, just quick point here. The reason you can t-chart it is because x is squared. Once you get it to the squared term, you can break it up by t-chart. The first one you have to pull out, and then what's left over we can do. So, top of the chart, what do we put there? Negative 12. I got 1 times 12, 2 times 6, or 3 times 4. Which of those can subtract to a minus 1 in the middle? 3 minus 4, good. So I'm going to do 6x squared plus 3x minus 4x minus 2. And then do my usual grouping. So from there, what can I take out of 6x squared and 3x? Okay, a 3x. 3x is going to come to the front. What will be left over? Okay, 6 divided by 3 leaves a 2x, and 3 divided by 3 leaves a plus 1. Then my second two guys, I have a minus 4 and a minus 2. What can both of those divide by? Negative 2. And then what's left over? 2x here. Negative 2 divided by negative 2 is a plus 1. See how these guys match? That's my second factor. And then where does my third factor come from? Remember the crap that you took out from each one? So 3x minus 2, that's your third guy here. So the first guy you have to find using the chart, and then whatever's left over, you break it up via t-chart. Okay? Now let's write our 3 answers. So we already know x equals negative 7 here. To find the other 2, remember you set these guys equal to 0. So 2x plus 1 equals 0, 3x minus 2 equals 0. And you can honestly usually do that in your head. My 1 is going to move over, then it'll turn to a what? Negative 1. Then divide by 2, x is minus a half. Now look at your graph. Which x is that? That's this one, right? That's your negative a half. And then my third one, I'm going to bring my negative 2 across. Now it's a positive 2. And then if I divide by the 3, what's my third one? It'd be 2/3. Yeah. So look, when you factor it, you have a plus 7 here. You have a minus 7 in the graph. You have a 2x plus 1 here. You have a minus a half in the graph. Then you have a 3x minus 2. You have a 2/3 in the graph. So each of these parentheses is going to match one of your x-intercepts on the graph. Now also, did any of these bounce or did they all pass through? They all passed through because were any of them doubles? No. So I'm going to put down here, there were no double roots. So no bounces. Okay, but remember, a bounce is when it's going to hit the x-axis and then stay on the same side. Okay? Okay, we have one more left. You don't have homework tonight. We'll do the homework in class tomorrow because you need a calculator. So turn to the last one and type it in. Turn to the very last question at the top. Type it into your calculator. Now look at the top. What's the power? Even or odd? Even. It's an x to the 4. So how many x's should I have? You should have 4, right? 17x3, 30x2, 12x minus 8. Okay, then I'm going to look at the graph, and I'm going to try to find a whole number where it hits the x-axis. Remember, I only need one. So I hit graph here. Okay, where does it look like it hits for my whole number? Negative 2. Now, if the answer is negative 2, what would the parentheses be? X plus 2. So for my factored form, I'm going to sketch the picture here. So it looks like it goes like this. This one here is negative 2. Notice that you only have one more. So if x equals negative 2, we said the parentheses is x plus 2. And now we're going to do our long division. So if it's a plus 2 in the parentheses, I put a minus 2 in the box. I have 3x to the 4, 17, 30.
But it's a negative. But do we have to put a plus?
So if it's a plus 2 in the parentheses, you put a minus 2. So these two always match each other. And then a minus 8. Okay, first number comes down. Almost done. Okay, 3 goes here. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. What's 17 minus 6? 11. 11 times negative 2 is 30 minus 22. 8 times negative 2? 12 minus 16 is? Then when I do negative 4 times negative 2?
Positive 8.
8, remainder of 0. Now, what's left over is going to be what power if this was an x to the 4? So it's 3x cubed, 11x squared, 8x minus 4. And remember, when it's a remainder of 0, then I don't have to worry about writing the 0. Okay, from here. Okay, it is suspicious that our graph doesn't have another whole number, so we're going to divide by negative 2 again. Because it could be a double root. So let's see, this is a 3.
So we do it again because it doesn't have another number?
What? Yes, because it doesn't have another whole number and my x is to the 3, so I can't t-chart that yet. So we have a 3, an 11, an 8, and a minus 4. Last time. 3 carries straight down. What's 3 times negative 2? Negative 6. 11 minus 6 leaves 5 left over. 5 times negative 2 is negative 10. 8 minus 10 is negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. My remainder is 0. So that's not a single root. At this point, it's already a double. Now, what do I have to do with what's left over? Now that it's squared, I can do what? T-chart to find the last 2. So I already know for my factored form that I have an x plus 2 and I have an x plus 2 again, because it already gave me a remainder twice of 0. So out of what's left over to find the last 2 factors, we'll do a t-chart. So top of the chart, 3 times negative 2, what do we get? Negative 6. I need them to subtract to 5, so I'm going to use 1 and 6, but which way will I minus? 6 minus 1. So I'll have 3x squared plus 1x, oops, wrong sign, minus 1x plus 6x minus 2. First two guys, what can we take out? Letter X, what's left over? 3x minus 1. Second two guys, 6 and 2, what can both of those divide by? 2, right? So then I do a plus 2 there. What's 6 divided by 2? 3x, and then that one's a 1. Okay, now look at your guys. Do they match each other like they're supposed to? Okay, I have a 3x minus 1 here. I have a 3x minus 1 here. And then what's my last factor that I pull from the outside? An x plus 2. What?
From the outside.
Yeah, so we'll have our x from here, and then our plus 2 from here for the outside. And then these two guys that matched each other, they go here. Okay, so question, is my negative 2 a double root? Is it a double root? How many times was it in there? 3. So x equals negative 2 is actually a triple root. Okay, so question, if you have a triple root, is it a bounce or a pass? Look at your graph. Okay, it's a pass. And remember, the only difference is a pass means that you go through the x-axis versus a bounce, you just touch it and stay on the same side. Y'all can just put it right there. Okay, now, if negative 2 is the answer for all 3 of these, what's my last answer here going to be? Do you remember how to find it? Set it equal to 0. So if it's a minus 1, I'm going to plus it across. And then divide by 3. So my last factor, I'm going to come up here on my graph. This last x is a third. Okay, so all I did there was I solved. I set it equal to 0. I added the 1 across, then I divided by 3. So look at your equation. You have x plus 2 3 times. That's a triple root. That gives me the negative 2. Then I had a 3x minus 1. That gives me the 1/3 from my other root. So that one only crossed twice because I had a triple and a single. That's my 4 x's. Does that kind of make sense? Okay, also if that's an x to the 4, is it odd or even? Even. And do you notice that both of your ends are pointing up? Okay, so both ends up. Okay, good job. So we'll do the homework tomorrow. Y'all have 5 minutes. I need calculators put back up. And then just keep your notes so that you have examples to look at tomorrow since it's a lot of steps. Okay, thanks. Thank you.